Emily Carter did not walk home. Her shoes never touched the sidewalk. But her music folder was found on the church steps. Emily Carter was 12 years old. She lived with her parents in a quiet neighborhood outside Dayton, Ohio. Her street was the kind where lawns were trimmed evenly and porch lights came on at the same time every evening. Emily was known for being careful. She double-checked her backpack before school. She reminded her mother about grocery lists. She did not like being late. Every Wednesday followed the same pattern. Emily left the house just before 6 p.m., carrying a blue folder filled with choir music. She walked to St. Mark's Methodist Church, practiced for an hour, then walked home. The route was short, less than 10 minutes. Her parents never worried about it. On March 14th, choir practice began as usual. Emily arrived early and sat in the second row. The choir director later said Emily seemed normal, quiet, focused. She sang when asked and followed along with the sheet music. Nothing about her behavior stood out. At approximately 6:40 p.m., Emily raised her hand. She asked if she could leave early because she felt tired. The director agreed. Emily packed her folder, zipped her jacket, and walked toward the front doors alone. This moment would later be replayed dozens of times. Emily exited the church at 6:41 p.m. A security camera inside the building captured her pushing the door open and stepping onto the front landing. She paused briefly as if looking ahead. Then she moved out of frame. That was the last confirmed image of her. Outside, the church steps led directly to the sidewalk. Streetlights were already on. Several parents were still inside the building. Others were arriving to pick up younger children. The parking lot was partially full. Nothing about the scene suggested danger. No one recalls seeing Emily walk away. At 7:15 p.m., Emily's mother called her phone to ask why she was not home yet. The call went to voicemail. At 7:25, she tried again. No answer. At 7:35, concern began to replace routine. Emily was not the type to wander. She did not stop at friends' houses without permission. She did not ignore calls. By 7:50 p.m., Emily's father got into the car and drove toward the church, following the exact route Emily would have taken on foot. He checked the sidewalks. He checked the small park along the way. There was no sign of her. When he reached the church, he saw something on the steps. The blue music folder was resting against the railing upright. The papers inside were neatly stacked. It was not wet. It was not torn. It did not look dropped or kicked aside. It looked placed there deliberately. Emily was nowhere in sight. Her parents began searching immediately. They called out her name. They knocked on nearby doors. They asked anyone outside if they had seen a young girl walking alone. No one had. At 8:30 p.m., they called the police. Officers arrived and secured the area. They photographed the steps and collected the folder. There were no visible signs of a struggle. No scuff marks. No damaged clothing. No blood. The church entrance looked exactly as it always did. Emily's phone records showed her device connected to a nearby cell tower at 6:42 p.m. The signal ended suddenly. It did not move. The phone was never located. Police canvassed the neighborhood that night. Residents were asked about vehicles, noises, or anything unusual. One person mentioned a dark-colored sedan parked briefly near the curb around that time. They could not describe the driver. Another resident said they heard nothing at all. Search efforts expanded quickly. Volunteers checked wooded areas behind the church. Officers searched alleys, dumpsters, and nearby streets. Nothing belonging to Emily was found beyond the folder. At this point in the investigation, detectives faced a narrow and troubling timeline. Less than 3 minutes passed between Emily leaving the church and her disappearance. If you're following this case so far, take a moment to pause here. Details like timing and placement matter. A single overlooked fact can change how a case is understood. Stay with the story. By midnight, authorities acknowledged what no one wanted to say out loud. Emily Carter had not simply wandered off. She had vanished within steps of a public building during a busy evening without a sound. The next morning, the case was officially classified as a missing child under suspicious circumstances. And everything that followed would hinge on one quiet detail that never made sense. Emily Carter never made it past the church steps. By morning, the church steps were no longer just a place of worship. They had become the center of an investigation. Yellow tape cut across the entrance. Officers returned in daylight, looking for details missed in the dark. The blue music folder was examined again. There were no fingerprints suitable for identification. No smudges that suggested a struggle. The edges were clean. The papers inside were in order. Investigators noted that if Emily had dropped it accidentally, the folder would likely have landed flat. Instead, it had been set upright, leaning against the railing. Security footage became the next priority. The camera inside the church confirmed Emily's exit at 6:41 p.m. She was alone. She was not followed. She did not appear rushed. There were no raised voices behind her. No one entered immediately after. Outside coverage was limited. A camera across the street showed part of the road, but not the steps themselves. At 6:43 p.m., a dark sedan passed through the frame. The footage was grainy. No license plate could be read. The vehicle did not stop on camera, but its presence was noted. Investigators mapped the timeline down to seconds. Emily steps outside at 6:41. Her phone last connects to a cell tower at 6:42. By 6:45, there is no sign of her anywhere near the church. Search dogs were brought in later that day. They picked up Emily's scent at the top of the steps. The trail led down across the sidewalk and stopped abruptly at the curb. There was no indication she walked farther. No sign the scent continued down the street. This suggested one possibility investigators could not ignore. Emily did not leave on foot. Police widened their focus. They reviewed known offenders in the area. They checked recent parolees. They interviewed church staff again, this time separately. They asked whether anyone unfamiliar had been seen attending choir practice in previous weeks. No names stood out. Emily's family opened their home to investigators. Her bedroom was untouched. Clothes for the next day were laid out neatly. Her backpack was still packed. Her alarm was set for 6:30 a.m. There was no evidence she planned to leave or meet someone secretly. At school, counselors spoke with Emily's classmates. Friends described her as shy but confident. She did not talk about strangers. She did not mention being afraid. There were no troubling messages on her phone or social media accounts. No deleted conversations. No hidden contacts. Tips began coming in almost immediately. Some claimed to have seen a girl matching Emily's description at a bus station. Others reported sightings at a shopping mall, a truck stop, even a campground 2 states away. Each lead was followed. Each one ended the same way. Misidentification. As weeks turned into months, the case lost momentum. Investigators returned again and again to the same problem. Too many people. Too little noise. Too few witnesses. Abductions like this usually left something behind. A scream. A dropped shoe. A damaged item. Emily's disappearance left nothing but silence. The church resumed services. The tape came down. The steps were cleaned. The railing was repainted. The place where the folder had been found looked ordinary again. Emily Carter's case did not. The theory of an opportunistic abduction remained. Someone familiar with the church schedule. Someone who knew children sometimes left early. Someone who could act quickly without drawing attention. But no suspect was ever charged. Years later, Emily's name remains on missing persons lists. Age-progressed images have been released. Her parents still update contact information. The blue folder is kept in evidence storage, carefully labeled, unchanged. The last confirmed fact in the case is still the same. Emily Carter stepped out of the church at 6:41 p.m. She was never seen again. No one can explain how a child disappeared in less than 3 minutes on a well-lit street outside a public building without a sound. And no one can explain why the one thing she carried was left behind so carefully. If you've listened this far, you understand why this case continues to trouble investigators. Missing person cases do not fade on their own. They remain open because answers may still exist. If this story stayed with you, continue exploring cases like Emily Carter's. Sometimes attention is the only thing that keeps a name from being forgotten.